and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to bring a case to your attention. This one is actually going to be featured this evening on a documentary on Channel 5 at 9 o'clock, with the second part the following evening. Same place, same channel, same time. This is a case that I only heard about, believe it or not, yesterday, and I did not sleep all of last night for reading, researching, watching different things. I was well and truly shocked. This has been described as the equivalent of a Scottish making a murderer. I want to share with you what I read, what I watched, and to encourage you to watch the documentary this evening that's going to air. I don't know what that documentary is going to say, if there's going to be any new information, but I wanted really to bring this to your attention and to direct you to other places where you can maybe read more about this if you're interested. The case I want to talk about is that of Jodi Jones and her boyfriend Luke Mitchell. Now, unfortunately, in 2003, Jodi Jones was brutally murdered, and as we speak today, Luke Mitchell, who was 15 at the time, is still serving a life sentence with a minimum of 20 years in prison. When we discuss the case and everything that happened, I think, like me, you will be astounded by how Luke is in prison and how he has been convicted on no evidence. Now, before I start to tell you the story, I do want to point out that there is no offence at all intended towards Jodi's family. What happened to Jodi was horrendous. No family should need to go through that. No girl should need to go through that. It was horrendous. I'm not here to point fingers. I'm not here to say, you know, everything I'm saying is gospel. I'm here to say that this is what I've read, this is what I've watched, and I eagerly look forward to watching the documentary to see how much of what's out there is true. And I want to share that with you so that you have some information going in to watch this if indeed you want to when it's on television. Now, what really resonated with me about this is that Luke and Jodi were both considered members of the goth subculture. Now, you maybe have guessed from my appearance that that is something that I very much was considered part of growing up. The type of music they liked, they both liked Korn, Nirvana, Metallica and Marilyn Manson. Again, big fan of all those bands and that artist. With Marilyn Manson, just to put it in there with the recent allegations, I've never been a fan of Manson's lifestyle and decisions he's made, but I always have been a fan of the music itself. But these teenagers sound very much like a lot of people I grew up with. I was quite a sheltered teenager myself, I had very strict parents, but certainly friends of mine sound very, very similar to Jodi and Luke. People who grew up very respectable, who have very respectable jobs, who are very decent people, but went through that awkward, strange, weird teenage phase. I just wanted really to tell you why this resonated with me so much and why I was just aghast when I read the entire case. This could have been one of my friends. So Jodi was 14 years old. Her boyfriend Luke was 15. He was her first proper serious boyfriend, and she'd recently been grounded by her mum. Now, something to say about Luke, which is certain that he was guilty of, is Luke did take cannabis and he supplied it to his friends and to Jodi. Jodi also took cannabis, but it has been admitted that she did this before she got involved with Luke, so that wasn't his influence. So Jodi had actually been grounded for a period of time as she hadn't met her curfew and had been caught at a cousin's house taking cannabis. Her mother understandably was not best pleased and grounded her. Now, on the night in question, it was the 30th of June 2003, and Jodi's grounding had just been lifted. And the first person that Jodi wanted to go see, obviously like any teenage girl, was her boyfriend Luke. Now, she left the house just after tea at 5 o'clock, and they lived about 1.5 miles apart. And there was an area between their houses where Jodi didn't walk alone. It was kind of secluded, it was a pathway, kind of like a wooded area. And Luke would go and meet her, and they would sort of meet halfway, and they would go to one or other of the houses and spend some time together, listen to some music, whatever teenagers want to do. So I want to give you both versions that I have read. Just obviously one may be right, one may be wrong. One version of this comes directly from Luke's own mother and someone that's been working very closely with her in this case by the name of Sandra Lean, who now actually represents Luke. Now, this lady, just to give you an idea who she is, a lot of people see her as a real hero in all of this, and a lot of people, especially from the area, see her as someone that's meddling, someone that doesn't know what she's talking about, Sandra was a mother in the area at the time, and her two daughters went to the same school. When this happened, she was obviously very concerned for her daughter's safety when something like this happened in this small village. But the more she heard, the more she was kind of aghast at what was happening to Luke. She couldn't see how the finger was being pointed firmly in his direction with the lack of evidence that they had. At this time, Luke's mother, Corinne, was just receiving nothing but backlash and hatred from the community. This is coming from Corinne herself and Sandra said the feeling in the community was very hostile towards her also, because she outwardly had said, I don't think this is right, I don't think that he has done this, and this was frowned on in a big way. Luke's mother, Corinne, actually reached out to Sandra as she didn't really feel that she had anyone that was taking her side in this. And Sandra, since 2003, has doggedly looked into this. She has written 2 books about it, a second one which she updated with new information. Those books are actually available on Amazon if you want to buy them. I will put links below if I can find them. Now, one part of a 3-part documentary by someone called James English. There's 3 parts, each is just over an hour. The first is a very long interview with Sandra Lean herself. The second is a long interview with Luke's mother. And the third is an interview with the person that did a polygraph test on both Corinne and Luke, which incidentally they both passed, but we shall get to that. So these documentaries with James English interviewing these 3 individuals all say that when Jodi didn't show up, Luke went home and complained to his mum. Where is she? She hasn't showed up. And his mum said, look, she's a teenage girl. She's probably got talking to some of her friends. She'll, don't worry about it. And him being quite the surly, mopey teenage boy, just went and got on with his evening. Jodi had been previously grounded, so maybe something had happened and she just hadn't shown up. Never once did Luke think that something gruesome had happened to her. So then I listened to a podcast, again just over an hour long, called Skinwalker True Crime. And this podcast does have a lot of information that's completely contradictory to what Luke's mother and Sandra Lean are saying. But just to put it out there in case, I can't say which side's right and which side's wrong. He said that Luke actually called Jodi's, I'm not sure if it was dad or stepdad, and said, Jodi hasn't shown up. And he said, well, she left the house at 5 o'clock. And he knew she was on her way and he didn't do anything further about that, which people found suspicious. So what had happened, unfortunately, Jodi had left the home, and on the pathway she had been intercepted, she had been followed, whatever had happened, and Jodi unfortunately was brutally murdered. The following information is disturbing and I just want to make you aware of that before I do discuss it. Jodi had been stripped naked and she hadn't been sexually assaulted. Her throat had been slit, they say, between 12 and 20 times. She had been mutilated, her face, her ear, her left breast, her abdomen, and basically left naked. The time of death was approximated to be around about 5:15 p.m. Jodi's body was said to be very similar to the condition of the body of the Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short, a very, very famous murder from many years ago. Some of the injuries inflicted on Jodi were very similar. Marilyn Manson actually paints, and he had an exhibition of art, and amongst that art were paintings of the Black Dahlia's body. Very distasteful in my opinion, but that's a personal opinion. He has a right to do that if he so chooses. But he had done this artwork. Marilyn Manson is famous for liking the grotesque. He tries to say that he tries to make the grotesque more beautiful. That's just something I find completely distasteful. So Luke was said to have a fascination with Marilyn Manson and the Black Dahlia. Now, Luke's fixation with Marilyn Manson stretched to having one CD, which he got after Jodi's murder. This CD was actually included in front of a magazine as a freebie. It's something that sort of alternative magazines do quite a lot. I have a lot of them myself. He bought this because there was a song that Marilyn Manson covered, which I think was Sweet Dreams by the Eurythmics. His mum said it was a cover of an old song and he completely ruined it. He did cover Sweet Dreams by the Eurythmics, so I think that was probably the one. And the CD had a bonus video on it of Marilyn Manson. Now, he did not purchase a Marilyn Manson album. He didn't go out and specifically seek down particular albums. This was a CD on a magazine with a freebie. I myself have about 5 or 6 Marilyn Manson albums. Do I need to be worried that people are going to think I'm some kind of freak or reprobate? Who knows? Also, there was a computer in Luke's home, and nowhere in the home was there anything to suggest that he had any kind of fixation, or indeed that he had even seen the images of the Black Dahlia or the paintings by Manson. I would have thought, given young teenage boys and a fascination with sort of the dark and macabre, if that were the case, would that not be on the internet search results? Would it not be in the history? Nothing was found to suggest that he had even seen this imagery, but because of his like of the artist, which was just a passing like, it wasn't a fixation, and because of the similarity of the body, you know, this pointed the finger of suspicion very firmly in Luke's direction. It also has to be said that in any alternative community, there usually are quite large groups of teenagers that like very similar things. So in that area, Luke did supply cannabis to his friends, and you can probably guarantee that that group of friends all liked very similar things. Probably some of them liked Marilyn Manson more than he did. Nobody ever looked at any of them. So moving on, because Jodi had basically just had her grounding lifted, she was told she needed to be home for her curfew, which was 10 o'clock, which was also Luke's curfew. She didn't show home at 10 o'clock, and her mother was livid. Her mother was really angry, and rightly so. Now, Jodi's phone was broken, so she had to contact Luke to try to talk to Jodi, and she contacted Luke and said, basically tell her to get home, she's grounded, and she was really angry. Luke then contacted her and said, but Jodi's not here. Jodi didn't come. I haven't seen Jodi all evening. He hadn't seen her since school that afternoon, and she hadn't been there. So obviously the mother is quite perplexed, and an agreement is made between Luke and Jodi's mum that he would have contact numbers of friends of theirs that perhaps the mother wouldn't know. So he was going to head up towards Jodi's mum's house, obviously having a look on the way, and Jodi's sister, the sister's boyfriend, and the grandmother were actually going to search down to meet him, I suppose, halfway. Now, when he said he was going out to look for, this is quite late, it was getting dark, and when he said he was going to look for Jodi, his mum said, no, you absolutely are not going out in the dark to look. And he said, yes, you bet your arse I am, I'm going out. So he went out, and his mum says, take the dog with you. So he had a large Alsatian called Mia. She had been partially trained as a tracker dog. It was a very big, strong, powerful dog. And his mum said quite hard to walk. If she wanted to go somewhere, she was going, and there was nothing you were going to do about it. You were following her. So he went with the dog and headed up toward the pathway, which ran between his and Jodi's house. Now, when he was walking on the pathway, he met on the way Jodi's sister, grandma, and the sister's boyfriend. They were all out with torches, obviously also searching for Jodi. Now, I have read elsewhere that they were searching for another family member. I don't know who that was. I don't know if there's any truth in that. As I say, I watched 3 hour and 10 minute long each documentaries by James English. I listened to the podcast, which was over an hour. I watched another 40-minute documentary, and I read every single comment under every single one of those videos, and we are talking hundreds. There were comments from people that had served in prison with Luke. There are people that have grown up with him. There are people from the area. There are all kinds of people that have commented, and we will get to that also. So whether the 3 were out searching for someone else, how they got as far as that it's been disputed, how did they walk as far as they had, looking for Jodi. They shouldn't have been that far along, because by that stage they shouldn't have known that Jodi was missing. Again, I don't know if there's any background on that, so I'm just giving you the information I've heard myself. So the 3 say to Luke that they want to double back the area that he has just walked. They have come along the way. They're confident that they have looked at everything. They want to continue straight on down the area they were walking in, that Luke has just come up and search more thoroughly in that direction, which they do. Luke turns with the dog and they walk that direction. Now, as they're walking, Luke's dog Mia alerts to something. As I said, she has been partially trained as a tracker dog, and she starts getting quite frantic, and she starts pawing at a wall that's beside them. She's like sniffing the air. She's obviously, something has made her stop, something has upset her. She's, getting quite frantic about something. And there was a V break in this wall at the point where the dog was alerting. Now the V brick, I didn't know what that was. It's basically a brick in a wall where it comes down in a V, where bricks have crumbled away. And Luke jumps over the wall at this area to see if he can see anything. He says he shone his torch, as obviously it was dark, and he could see something white. And then he realised that it was a pair of legs. He thought it was a mannequin at first, and unfortunately, obviously the realisation as to what he was actually looking at, and it was Jodi's body. He came back over the wall, and it's been said by the grandmother, the sister and the sister's boyfriend that his eyes were very wide. He looked very shocked. He called 999. It said that he was very frantic and upset when he did this. He was very shocked. He was visibly shocked from his face. The other families went over the wall and obviously saw that it was Jodi's body. The grandmother did what you would do. She cradled her granddaughter's head, and just everyone was completely devastated. So the police arrive, and immediately a very, very special interest seems to be taken with Luke. He is taken away from the other three and kept alone. They are kept together, which in this sort of situation you're meant to separate everyone and get individual statements from every individual, but those three were sat together and talking, and Luke was kept on his own. They took all of Luke's clothing. They scraped under his fingernails. They took, obviously they have a DNA profile. No clothes were taken from any of the other three. No scraping, no anything. Nothing was taken from them. Their clothes weren't taken from them. Now they had been in, that's not me suggesting they had anything to do with the murder, please don't think that. What I'm saying is, because they'd been in that immediate location and walked all around it, and the grandmother had touched the body, there could have been DNA transference onto their clothing from the perpetrator. So the clothing really should have been taken, and it never was. Luke was questioned without a solicitor. His mother said he actually wasn't allowed one. Now that is not lawful. He wasn't allowed a solicitor. The mother was asked, was he intimidated or hit by the police, and she said, well, no, he wasn't physically beaten, but at one stage he asked to go to the bathroom and he was taken by two police officers who stood as he urinated very closely behind him, and pardon my language when I say this, said, just confess, you wee bastard. They basically said they knew he did it, just confess. And the pressure was constantly put on him. We know you did it, it's you did it. So Luke was questioned at length, as I say, without a solicitor present. He was 15 at this stage. He was traumatised. It has been said by a paramedic that he seemed emotionless, that he was looking at his phone, that he didn't seem bothered at all by what had happened. He should have been completely frantic and he wasn't. Now I would say that he probably was texting on his phone because he was probably telling his mother what was happening. If you're in that situation, sat by yourself for a long period of time and you're a teenager and you have a phone, every teenager I know is going to get the phone out and text their mum or text their friend and say, oh my god, Jodi's died or Jodi's dead and I'm in the police station and they think I do it. That's normal behaviour. Your face may be deadpan. It's normal for some people to be shocked in a situation like this and not react in a certain way. As an example, I have been victim of armed robbery. It was terrifying, but I was asked afterwards by people, how were you so calm? I wasn't so calm. I was just frozen. I was terrified, but I tend to shut down in a situation where other people maybe get overly emotional. Some people do that. That's not unusual, and psychologists have said a lot of people do that. That's not unusual. So the statements were taken and everyone went home. A police liaison officer was actually sent to Luke's home, and that police liaison officer stayed with them for several weeks. Now they thought that person was there to help them and to tell them what was happening and to keep them abreast of the situation, but in actual fact, in retrospect, they now feel that that person was sent to see if they could find or spot anything incriminating that could perhaps link him or could be twisted in any way, is what Luke's mother said, to try to implicate or fix him to this crime. Now what I want to say about the statements that were made by Jodi's family, those statements all said that Mia, the dog, had alerted to something at the wall, that she had pawed the wall, she had stood on her hind legs, she had sniffed the air, and she obviously had found something. And after that, that Luke climbed over the wall and found the body. Now that was agreed and stated by all 4 people that had been there. Now later, that also they stuck to that story for a month, and then inexplicably all 3 changed their mind and said that Luke walked straight to the body. There was no mention of the dog, there was no mention of the dog stopping, there was no mention of the fact that they had asked to go back the direction that Luke had just come from. They had requested to go that way, but everything changed, and there's never been any question as to why did you change your statements. Why did all 3 of you say that the dog alerted and then Luke climbed over, and now you're saying the dog didn't alert and Luke just climbed over? Initially all statements matched, and now a month later they don't match at all. There's so much information about this case, it's going to be impossible for me to go over it all with you today without doing several parts in a video. And I do really want to try and encourage you to watch the programme that's going to air tonight, so I am going to skip a lot of information. I will link the information below if you should wish to watch it or read it. So next there is a rumour that Luke's mother, Corinne, has burned clothing that he was wearing on that evening, and she has done this in the garden in, like, she called it a portable barbecue base. It was like a small concrete structure that you could like have a little fire in. Now they took the grate, they took the bricks and they took the ash, and all were forensically tested, and they could not find any evidence of any clothing having been burned in there. I have read from other comments that neighbours said that clothing was burned in there. I have read a lot of rumour mill from the area. Now I don't know how much emphasis or truth to put on that, whether this really is the case or this is just, again, rumour, because that has been said. But in the months that followed, the press pretty much vilified Luke. They put some horrible headlines. They called him a freak. They called him a monster. They basically did everything but say this guy has murdered his girlfriend, he is guilty. And it has to be said that now they can't do that. He was 15 at the time and they plastered his face over every single newspaper. And that today, when this is only 2003, that today that would not be allowed. He would have his anonymity. But pretty much the comments, if you read on the videos that have been done, everyone from the area is going down it saying, I remember this, and I remember thinking that he was as guilty as sin. I thought he did this, but after having watched these documentaries, I can't believe I thought that. I can't believe that he's been sentenced on the evidence that they don't have. And I read the same comment over and over and over again. He clearly didn't do it. They need a retrial. They have tried to have a retrial, I think 4 times, and every time it's been denied for ridiculous reasons. I'll not go into all of those, but he's still not been allowed a retrial. He has been in prison all this time since his sentence, and he completely refuses to admit that he killed Jodi. He was given a minimum 20 years, but it was open-ended. Now obviously for him to get that probation, which would be due in 2025, he would have to say that he did it. He would have to take the classes and, you know, all of the offered psychological help, because obviously he had issues to do this. But because he refuses to say, I did this, he maintains his innocence. The actual prison guards, there were comments that the guards even told prisoners at the time when he didn't do it. He was stitched up by the police. People that served with him said, I served with this guy, he did not do it. He will not admit he did it because he didn't. On the flip side, I read comments from one individual that had a lot to say repeatedly that said, I looked in this guy's eyes and he did it, you know. So it's very, you know, you're taking 2 sides of the same coin, but I would say 80% of people in the comments are saying, no, he didn't do this. A lot of them are saying, I thought he did because of what the papers said. The papers made up, and the people in the area, some of them made up the most ridiculous. He hung his pet dog from outside their house, was one of them. Luke loved animals, and his mum said, well, if he had have hung a dog from the doorway in the front of the house, would someone not have seen it and reported me to the SSPCA? Of course they would. But all kinds of things were made up. Small things were misconstrued. He had written an essay that had a bit of violence about it, to be honest, and they had spoken to his mother about it and had suggested that he could do with some kind of evaluation. Luke was a very opinionated young man, and he did have very strong opinions about religion and his dislike of it, to be quite fair. And because he had this dislike of religion, he did sort of in the other end look into a lot of dark stuff. And that's a normal part of growing up in expressionism and being a teenager and finding yourself and working out life. That's not unusual. But this is all sort of because he did random drawings and random writing things on pages and books and stuff. That's all kind of been pointed out as being a sign that he was a Satanist and he was evil and he was cruel. There is one individual, I think WATP, they were down as in the comments, that had made very strong statements about Luke threatening a 12-year-old girlfriend that he once had if she did not sleep with him, that he would kill her, and he held a knife to her throat. Now this is this one place I've seen this, and the same individual wrote something else about another girl that was scared of him. Again, is it rumour? Is there anything in it? Who knows? But I want to give you a fair representation, obviously. So Luke has been arrested, his clothes have been taken, he's been questioned without a lawyer. The fire pit in the back garden has been forensically examined, nothing has been found. The 3 individuals that were there at the time that were around the body weren't forensically, nothing was taken, they changed their statement. Also, a woman driving a car said to have seen 2 people which she claims were Jodi and Luke that evening together. Obviously Luke said she never showed up, but she was driving on a narrow road around a sharp bend with 2 kids in the back of the car, and she had a glance. Now what she said she saw was the back of their heads, so this woman can make a positive ID from the back of someone's head. She said that the girl was wearing a light blue top and blue trousers, blue jeans, and Jodi was actually wearing black jeans and a black top with bright neon orange lettering across the back of a band that she liked. The boy was said to have very frizzy, thick, bunched up hair in a ponytail. Luke's hair was very poker straight, thin, and as I said already, she saw them from the back. Now, one of the police officers took a photograph of Luke in the police station and brought it up to her and said, "Is this the guy you saw?" And she said, "Yes, that's him." She saw the back of his head. So she said that was him. Now, I thought that you were supposed to show a lineup of individuals, some of which looked quite similar, and ask. No, they brought her a picture and said, "Is that him?" Now, what is even more interesting is this lady, who was meant to be an independent witness, who was not meant to have any tie or know the family, Jodi's family at all. Her brother-in-law was a very close friend of Jodi's family. On the morning after the murder, he was actually in Jodi's grandmother's house, and he was telling her that his sister-in-law had made this sighting, etc, etc, and he'd then gone back to the sister-in-law, and then the next day he was in Jodi's mother's house and they were talking about it again, and then he went back and he was actually present for both statements that his sister-in-law gave to the police about the sighting. Now, Sandra Lean has said, and she has since done a criminology degree, such as her want to help Luke, and she's got nothing to gain from this. You know, she just sees it as a ridiculous miscarriage of justice, and she's worked very closely with Luke's mother all these years. As she said, you can't not have recall affected by someone coming and feeding you information directly from the family. And still this woman picked the wrong colour clothes that Jodi was wearing, and she described Luke's hair completely incorrectly, and she only saw them from the back. How can you make a positive identification of someone from the back of their head that you saw out a moving car going round a corner? I don't know, the mind boggles. Someone else said, well, it's obvious it was them that she saw because it was a very small community and the 2 people that she saw have never been found. They've never found alternative people and said, oh, well, actually it was those 2. It wasn't Luke and Jodi. But is it possible that the people they saw could have had something to do with it and don't want to come forward and say it was them? Who knows? But you cannot make a positive ID of someone from the back of their head. Obviously, I think she actually then changed what she said about clothes they were wearing and stuff afterwards. Obviously, after the brother-in-law had been back and forward a couple of times, that should never have been admissible. So we've got the fire pit and nothing in it. We have got the witness that positive ID'd someone from the back of their head. We have got the other people that weren't forensically examined. As I said, Luke Everything was taken from him. Under his nails were scraped. None of Luke's DNA were found on Jodi's body, around Jodi's body in that area. None. They did find 5 separate DNA profiles. They said there were saliva, blood, sweat, semen and fibre found on or around her body. None of these were Luke's. Now this has very vehemently been said by Sandra Lean and by Luke's mum Corinne. Now I just want to put forward, now I don't know the accuracy of this, but in comments someone actually had, no, it hasn't been said it definitely wasn't his, but what was said was there were not enough markers to determine who it belonged to. It could belong to 50% of males. It may have been his. The interview that I watched of Sandra Lean said 100% he was ruled out. None of the DNA was Luke's. Again, I want to put both pieces of information there for you. It does seem that they had no forensic evidence to tie him to the scene at all. Are they saying that a 15-year-old boy miraculously managed to remove all of his DNA evidence but leave all the other 5 pieces behind of someone else's? Also, Jodi had put up quite a fight. Some of the wounds that she had were defence wounds. There was a lot of blood. There was detail gone into about this, which I won't discuss because, you know, we don't need to, it's a bit much. But they've said that the person that did this would have been covered in blood. There would have been a lot of blood from somewhere. There was none found on Luke anywhere. They scraped under his nails at the scene, and there was mud under his nails, and his hair was greasy. So it was proof that he hadn't been home and showered and washed and scrubbed under his nails, because he was your typical young, filthy teenage boy. He needed a shower, he needed to wash his hair and clean his nails. And all of that, for the people that try and say he went home, his mum burnt his clothes and covered for him. If that were the case, would he not have had a wash and cleaned out under his nails and stuff, which he didn't? He was found to need a wash when they took the stuff from him. So that doesn't really tie together for me. So there's no DNA evidence on the body from Luke. There's no evidence on Luke from Jodi. There are 5 other male DNA profiles there. No one else is suspected. Right from the off, Luke is the suspect. And rather than look at evidence and try and find the responsible individual, police right from the start have looked at Luke and looked at how they could manipulate evidence to actually make it look like he was guilty for this crime, even though everything they came up against, other than people say, this guy was a freak, this guy carried a knife, this guy did drugs, this guy liked weird stuff. Maybe all that's true, but you can't convict someone to a life in prison on no evidence based on the fact that you don't like them, that they're a bit of a dick, like what some people said, like, you know, he's a freak. He might be, but does that mean he killed his girlfriend? And there's no evidence to be found? No. So also something else that was said is that Luke provided telephone numbers to Jodi's mum to ring her friends to try and find where she was before they went out to search. But the only person that Jodi's mum telephoned was her mother, Jodi's grandmother. No one else was ever called. The friend that she had been at, the cousin whose house she'd been at recently smoking the dope when she'd been grounded, they never checked with her to see if she was at her house. Now this is obviously everything that's been said by Sandra Lean and by Luke's mother, and a lot of comments that they're making do seem to point towards Jodi's family. I don't want to go into things that have been said. There have been discussions that witnesses saw a stout man following, like a stocky man following Jodi closely behind her, and it has also been said, obviously I'm just repeating a lot of information I read and saw, it has been said that this stocky man may have been Jodi's own brother, Joey. He fit the description, he was out of the house at that time, he was said to have lied about being in the house when he wasn't in the house. The body wasn't sexually assaulted, so, you know, is that possible, is it not? We don't know. Now also, apparently 11 years after the incident, someone confessed. Luke's still in prison and we still don't know who that person is. Now apparently in Sandra Lean's book it does actually hint towards the fact that that person may be Joey Jones, Jodi's brother, but we don't know for sure. But this is certainly something that raises questions and surely should bring a case for appeal. There are other people that need to be looked at in this also. Around the time of the actual murder, a moped was seen leaning up against the V in the wall by several witnesses. Now, 2 cousins of Jodi's drove about on this moped. Obviously we don't know if these people were involved. These two cousins were nowhere to be seen, but the bike was seen at the point in the wall where Jodi's body was found. The two cousins had said they weren't there, they had lied about the time they were there, but it was found later by a local tool hire place that they had left there around 5 o'clock, around closing time, and that would put them right in that right area at the right time when Jodi was said to be murdered. And that bike, the moped, was seen leaning up against the wall with neither boy on it. So again, that is very suspicious. That's not me saying they did it, but that's saying that is someone else that needs to be looked at. Also, it was said by both Sandra Lean and Corinne that Jodi's grandmother had actually contacted both cousins and told them not to tell the police, not to go to the police. So that in itself, again, what's going on with that? Why is that not being looked into? Why are these guys not having their DNA taken? If they have, please let me know below. I'm hoping this documentary will open a lot of new windows into this case. So we have the brother that no one has looked into. We have got the two cousins who no one has looked into. There is also an individual from the area who had scratches on his hands and face. This same individual wrote an essay 2 weeks before the murder about a girl being murdered in the woods. That was quite violent. He told 3 individually separate stories about how he got the scratches on his face and his hands. Obviously, remember, Jodi put up a fight. Luke had no marks on him, nothing. This guy did. And one of this guy's friends actually went to the police and said, look, this guy was in the area at the time. He's a bit of a freak, as in he does, he had a history of knife crime. He had a history of assaulting women. He had marks on him. He had written an essay about this kind of thing. Now, I think they possibly looked into him a bit. Now, the friend said in the documentary I watched that he convinced his friend to go into the police station and to, I suppose he must have given the information or turned himself in or whatever it is. But the police said, right, thanks for that, we'll be in touch. And didn't get back in touch because they had Luke in custody at this stage and he was their man. So this information that was given to them was, I think the guy said that they didn't get in touch until 4 years later or something, but with no intention of looking further into it. So with this guy, we've the two cousins whose bike was saw up against the wall. A lot of people feel that the cousins and this guy did it together. We also have the brother who people say was following her. The lack of a sexual assault, they say, could potentially point towards him. Again, this is just information I'm reading. All I'm wanting to put across to you here is not that I feel any of these individuals did anything, but that I feel that there are other people that need to be looked at. Were these individuals' DNA compared against the DNA profile found on Jodi's body? And we're on to something else. Jodi's boyfriend, his DNA was found on Jodi's t-shirt. I've heard 2 trains of thought here. One is that Jodi was wearing her sister's t-shirt, which was how the sister's boyfriend's DNA was on it. Sandra actually said that the police went to them with the suggestion. Is it not possible that Jodi could have borrowed her sister's top and that's how that the police actually gave them the suggestion that that was the sister's top? Now, again, I don't know if that's true. This is what Sandra Lean did say in her interview, that that was a suggestion provided by the police. He was never questioned as a suspect. So another piece of information that's given, someone actually reports a person that lives opposite the lane. Now, I'm not sure if this is the same individual with scratches on his face. I read in the comments that it was. Obviously, I don't know if that's the case. But this individual's DNA was found in a condom very close to the body. And he claims that he went down the lane to masturbate because he shared a bedroom with his brother and he had no privacy. And he used a condom when he did this. Now, I find that in itself perplexing. But this guy's DNA was found at the scene. And the time he says that he went down there to do it, Jodi had already been murdered. Her body was there. And it's been said he would have needed to step over the body to get there and step back again, which is why people think that he maybe is implicated with the 2 cousins whose bike was seen there. Again, conjecture, rumour, fact, who knows. But the bike was seen there. That in itself has been listed as fact. This guy's DNA was in a condom there. That's also fact. He has admitted to being there. He has admitted why his DNA is there. But doesn't ever seem to have been asked, was the body there? Did you see it? How did you get there without having seen it? This is why the program's going to answer so many questions, hopefully. I just want to read you something I've taken from online of someone that has looked very deeply into this case. Now, I'm actually going to give names here when I read this. This is information that is available online. This is not me saying this is the case, but I want to read this as I feel this does tie the information together very well that I gave to you already. So it says, overall, the police investigation from the outset was flawed. Other people were witnessed at the murder scene, such as John Ferris, Jodi's cousin, Gordon Dickey, Josie's second cousin. A local cyclist passing named Leonard Kelly heard strangling sounds from across the wall. Stephen Kelly, Jodi's sister's fiance, and a mystery man followed Jodi onto the path. Additionally, numerous items of DNA were recovered from the body, none of which was ever identified as being Luke's. A moped used by Ferris and Dickey was also discovered to have been seen leaning against the V-brick in the wall at the estimated time of the murder. They were unable to explain why they were there. They were let free without any further inquiry, as Mitchell was already firmly in the frame and had even lied to the police as to when they were there. The case is a trial by media and absolutely stinks of a miscarriage of justice. Luke wasn't there at all. The witness statements could not accurately account for him being there, whilst also accounting for him having time to come home, dispose of incriminating evidence, and go back out again. On the other hand, a mystery man was seen by a witness following closely behind Jodi as she entered one end of the path closest to her house. Recently, a shocking revelation has since emerged about this man, the man that followed her. He admitted it was him behind Jodi and confessed to the murder, so there's been a confession. A senior police official took the confession that this person gave and has since informed both Luke's mother, Corinne, and Luke's power of attorney, Sandra Lean. This person was witnessed at the time and has only in the past few years admitted to the murder. So, this man is hypothesised to be Jodi's brother, who has quite a few mental issues, who had violence issues, that did also take drugs but was prone to odd behaviour. Again, that's not me saying that that's the case, but all I'm saying is all this information on all these people and all this inexplicable, why was the bike there? Who was it that followed Jodi? Who has confessed? Why has this guy got all these marks? Why has he changed his mind 3 times about how he got them? How has someone went beside the body and masturbated and not seen it when they've admitted that the time they did it, the body was there? Was the body taken from somewhere else and put there? That's never been made completely clear. It does seem that they think it happened there, but did it? Now, another thing that I find quite confusing is that the alibi that Luke provided was not admissible in court because it was his mother. Luke was at home at the time cooking tea. 2 phone calls were made, one from the house and one to the house. Now, this is conflicting information. Sandra Lean and Corinne both say that Luke called her every day at work, where she was confirmed to be, to ask what he was meant to be making for dinner that night. And he did. He made the phone call, and apparently there are logs to say that that phone call was made. Luke's brother was also at work that evening. Sandra said he was confirmed to be at work, and a phone call was made by him to the house to say that he was going to be late home from work. Now, 3 people lived in that house. There was Sandra, Luke, and Luke's brother. And Sandra and Luke's brother were both confirmed to be at work, and someone was in the house receiving a call and making a call that are both logged. But that alibi was not allowed because it was his mother. His mother was actually not allowed in court for the trial until the last day, until she was called to give evidence. I don't know the reasoning for that. Now, this is what has been said by Sandra and by Corinne in the official interviews. What was said in various comments that I read, that Luke's brother admitted that he was at home watching pornography and that Luke was not in the house. So is that true? Is that rumour? 2 people are officially being interviewed and saying one thing, and then other people are saying the complete opposite, which is why is this case is so infuriating. When Luke was in prison, as I said before, he has always denied this to anyone that will ask. He has never said to anyone that he did it. He has said, I will stay in prison for the rest of my life, rather than admit doing something I didn't do. I didn't do this. But he seems to have been screwed right from the start by the press, by the police. Everyone in the local area thought he did it. The mother's property, she owned a caravan park. They set fire to all the caravans. She was getting death threats. Sandra Lean, who is actually the lady that did the criminologist degree to help and has written the books, she was getting death threats. She was getting really horrible attacks in the street. She had to be careful when she left, at what time she left her house. People seem to be firmly in one of two camps about Sandra. They either feel that what she has done is very brave, and she's gone really far in trying to help this family, and other people feel that what she's doing is very disrespectful to Jodi and she's just trying to make money from a book. And this woman has given a lot of years of her life to this, and I don't think a few sales of a book is going to really make up for that. And the fact she's gone and done a criminology degree, and to be honest, everything I've seen, everything I've read, whether or not looks guilty, there's very little evidence to point to the fact that he is, and at the end of the day, it's meant to be without any reasonable doubt. And already I've been able to give you 4 other suspects immediately that have never been investigated because the police just simply thought they had their man. How on earth this boy was sentenced to this with no forensic evidence of any description, with no witness evidence of any description that can be plausible, I just cannot get my head around at all. In prison, Luke actually agreed to do a lie test, and I am aware these are not admissible in court. And the interview that James English does with the lie detector expert is very, very interesting to watch. It's over an hour long also. And he vehemently sits there and says, no, he did not do this, and no, the mother did not cover it. He is 100% resolute. Apparently, Luke scored off the charts in honesty. Now, something that's being said by people is he's got his eyes closed during the lie detector test, which is actually also online. I will link it below. And that he looks like he's trying to control his breathing, and you can beat the lie detector test. Now, this lie detector test was taken in a room that was, his mother describes, like a goldfish bowl, and there were people all around watching, obviously really interested in this, police officers. But there were also individuals making faces at him and trying to put him off, and just trying to get in the way in whatever way they could. And the lie detector expert actually says to him, just close your eyes, pretend they're not there, ignore them. And he says in this interview, I told him to close his eyes. Other people just don't seem to watch the interviews. They don't seem to read the information. They just attack him for sitting there with his eyes closed and acting like he's trying to control his breathing. There was even talk about him controlling his anal sphincter. I mean, for goodness sake. This lad was asked by the guy to close his eyes and ignore these police officers who were trying to interfere with the test, but still it's the young lad's fault, even though he passed with flying colours all questions, which they weren't allowed to know what the questions would be until they were in the chair in front of him. The mother was also questioned, and she was asked if she helped cover up anything, if she burned any clothing. He was obviously asked, did he have anything to do with Jodi's murder? Did he know? Did he do it? They both passed with flying colours all the questions, but obviously this is not something that's admissible, but it's interesting. Now, there is probably much more about the case I haven't covered, but this video is pretty long as it is. But this case is just, my mind boggles. I'm completely and utterly perplexed with how this has happened, how this young lad's still in prison. There is more footage I want to watch. I eagerly will watch the show tonight and tomorrow night. I'm hoping that there's some new information comes to light, but I would be really, really interested to hear what you think. If there are offensive, nasty comments, I will delete them. It's not a case of only wanting to hear one side of the story, but anything sensationalist or nasty or arguments between are you stupid and swearing and all this stuff will just be removed. This is about the truth, whether that be for or against Luke. My point of view in this, from a person on the outside with sway in neither direction, having heard as much as I've heard, is that there needs to be a retrial. As Sandra said, when asked about James English, do you ever think any day, what if I'm wrong? What if he did it? And she said every day, because if I didn't think that, then I shouldn't be doing this. I should always be striving to see if there's more information. And she is adamant that she thinks he's innocent, but she questions herself daily. And all that Sandra wants to see is all of the evidence opened up for an independent review, for people to come in, look at this evidence again, and for a decision to be made from that. As it is, a retrial has been denied to look on numerous occasions. Still, the police are saying, we are confident that we've got the right person. I'm not understanding how you can be confident you have the right person when someone else has come forward and confessed and admitted they followed her. How you can be confident you've got the right person when other people's DNA was found on the body and Luke's wasn't. How you can be confident when a moped of relatives was seen at the scene at the time of the murder and they admitted they had lied about where they were, that the grandmother told them not to come forward, that we're going on the evidence of a woman that saw the back of someone's head and then ID'd him. It's just, it makes no sense to me. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Obviously try and be polite, try and be respectful. And please, if you're watching this after you saw the documentary, feel free to put your thoughts down there about the documentary. I may do a follow-up video if there is new information. If not, then I probably won't. But it's a case that doesn't seem to be very widely known, and it's one that needs to be known. Thank you for listening, guys. All the links to all the information I discussed will be below. Over and out from Letterboxd.